Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Alan Catlett. I'm with the International Franchise Association, and we're very excited to continue our full labor and hiring webinar series today. As you may recall, this series is in response to concerns we have heard from you, our IFA members, relating to pressures and problems with hiring. As we step back and research the problem a little deeper, we discovered that the labor shortage is not just one problem, but really a series of problems and concerns. So today's presentation, Preparing for Return to Work, Addressing Employee Concerns, will tackle a few issues that we've discovered become very important to employees. A recent McKinsey article highlighted the psychological stress of returning to the workplace. 49% of respondents expressed some concern of negative mental health impact. And among those that had returned to the workplace and expressed concern around negative mental health, fear of contracting COVID or passing it on to a loved one were the top drivers for 74% of respondents. These questions impact an employee no matter if they're returning to a head office, a service center, or the local franchise location. So to understand how our members are solving for these concerns within their own workplaces and through which supporting the greater business community, we brought together this terrific panel to help us understand this further. This group is going to address parental concerns from preschool childcare to after school, homework help and test prep, as well as office cleaning procedures, protocols, and policies. Two quick notes before we get started. We are going to record today's webinar, and at the end, we'll make it available to IFA members through community.franchise.org. And if you have any questions during today's webinar, if you could put it in the questions box on GoToWebinar, and then we'll address them at the end. So on that note, I'd like to introduce a great group of franchise professionals who have kindly volunteered their time to join us today. First, Joe Kirchner, CEO of Primrose School Franchising Company, and Huntington Sharma, President of Huntington Learning Centers, and Bud Summers, Vice President of Operations of PuroClean, Inc. Thank you again for joining us. I'm going to hand things over to Joe to get the discussion started. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Alan, and welcome everyone. We're really pleased to have this opportunity to share our experiences and probably the most, well, certainly for me, the most disruptive past 18, 19 months that I've ever experienced in business. I'm sure for most everyone. I am going to pass this to Ann and then Bud to let them give you some background on themselves and their company, and then I'll do the same, and then we will open up discussions on some of the topics that were recommended for us to discuss today. So with that, Ann, welcome, and please share some thoughts about you and your company.
Thank you, Joe. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alan, for the intro, and Bud and Joe for being co-speakers today. This is such an important topic and one that I hope we can address your questions and concerns. I'm Ann Huntington Sharma. I'm the president of Huntington Learning Center. We're the nation's leading tutoring and test prep provider with about 300 locations. Prior to COVID, I'm going to use what Joe said. We were brick and mortar, which means it was a very disruptive 18 plus months at Huntington Learning Center. Thankfully, we have a fantastic network, fantastic franchisees, corporate staff, and families that we help every single day. Since 1977, our mission has been to give every student the best education possible. And with the onset of COVID, not only do we fulfill this mission in our brick and mortar centers, now we fulfill it online in a hybrid approach, which is online and in person. So before we delve into what we're doing at the Huntington level, I'm going to kick it off to Bud. Bud?
Thanks so much, Ann. I want to say I'm grateful to be with two such well-equipped and knowledgeable professionals on the call today. I've been in the restoration business my children would say, since the earth was cooling, which is a little hurtful. But currently I'm the Vice President of Operations for PuroClean. We have 350-ish offices in the US and Canada. And we were not only dealing with this as franchise owners who were trying to figure out protocol to keep their employees safe, but also dealing with cleaning in homes, businesses, retail establishments, and had to come up with protocol and adjust that protocol as the information about COVID and its spread and what was an active amount of cleaning changed. So for us, our franchises did a fabulous job. They kept themselves safe. They kept their employees safe. They developed protocols within their offices, and they had to deal with going into different situations, and quite frankly, dealing with a varying degree of protocols based on each individual business or homeowner and what their expectation was. So a very trying time, but we have come through it, and quite frankly, some of our franchises flourished during this time. So it was a good time to be PuroClean.
Thank you, Bud. So I am Jo Kirshner. I am the CEO of Primrose Schools. The company is a premier brand leader in early education and childcare. Next year will be our 40th anniversary. We have 455 schools in 32 states currently, and a pipeline of over 100 in process. Sometimes 2 and 3 years it takes to get a school up out of the ground or get one and convert it to a Primrose school. But there's a huge demand for quality childcare and early education in this country, not just for the children today, but our future workforce pipeline. And we were working really hard pre-pandemic to get the federal government to recognize the importance of childcare as an economic driver, or in all aspects of education, actually, because our educated workforce is going to be globally competitive. The pandemic had silver linings. Of course, initially, the childcare sector was shut down. And shutting it down, then the emergency responders, the police force, the workforce, the healthcare workers, the food delivery company workers, all of those people couldn't go to work who worked full time. And what started to happen was childcares were popping up in warehouses with no security and very little talent that's trained on how to provide a healthy, safe environment, let alone an early learning quality care experience. And so in addition to the help that we got through the IFA initially on handling this pandemic, because we're franchise companies, we also went through an industry association called the Early Care and Education Consortium, and went to governors, went to the White House, went to the federal leaders, and pushed really, really hard with a unified voice that we had to get the child care centers back open just to keep the children safe. They did do that. And then, because there were licensing regulations on so many children per classroom in the distancing, and so many other regulations that were happening, that the child care centers really couldn't survive financially with the limited number of children that could even attend. We went back to the federal government for funding, and we were able to get 3 different tranches of funding, 2 in the Trump administration, 1 in the Biden administration, and now in the pending reconciliation bill is permanent child care funding, recognizing child care as an economic driver for the United States. So it is a silver lining in the midst of a lot of disruption and a lot of uncertainty, even still, that we're all facing day by day. And it's not just federal regulation in many cases for us, it's also state regulations that are different state by state, and trying to support the franchise owners has really been a challenge. The good news is, as many states have opened up and going back to school as of last week and this week, we are seeing occupancy back to normal, and in some markets even above what it was before, because unfortunately a lot of the independent providers have not been able to survive the financial impact of this disruption. So I want to open this conversation up. First of all, I'm sure we all, because we're service providers, recognize that people are our most important asset, and without them, we can't deliver our service. So, Ann, I'm going to start with you. Are your staff back in the workplace, both at your headquarters and in your franchises, or are you just now beginning those discussions? What does that look like?
And this I'm sure we're all dealing with right now. All of our locations are open. Families have the option to be in center, remote, or hybrid. And of course, our employees, for the most part, have that option as well. So should there be a teacher who does not feel comfortable to be in center, he or she can be remote and teach remotely. In terms of our main office, our corporate employees, what we did at the beginning of the pandemic, we created a task force, and we've surveyed our corporate employees multiple times to really understand the pulse and see how they feel. Now, Alan opened this up with the McKinsey study, and it is true. It goes beyond just the professional. There's also the mental, the stress, the Zoom fatigue, and all of that. So by gathering the information and speaking with our employees, we made the decision at the corporate level to remain remote until the earliest July 2022. And what we've actually found is that throughout this pandemic, being remote, we are more efficient, we are more collaborative, we're communicating more, and we're getting more done. Now, in the beginning of the pandemic, as I shared earlier, we weren't online. So we had to completely reinvent our entire model. So with that has given us the opportunity to expand that and see where that takes us. Now, as I shared earlier, our mission is to give every student the best education possible. So what we really want to do is we want to make all of our decisions based on that mission. So from the corporate level, because we're more collaborative, because we're more efficient and we're getting more done, we're staying this way, which is actually enabling us to really get a talent from multiple areas. We're located in the New York tri-state area, and now we can attract talent from all over the United States. It has also enabled our employees to move should their lifestyle change and they decide that they want to move outside of the New York metro area. So there have been some silver linings in terms of our workforce and our employees, and we're seeing that it's working. Now, to step back for a moment, in franchising, we're all about brand standards. And at Huntington, we have tremendous brand standards. Since the onset of the pandemic, at the unit level and at the system level, we are very cognizant of those brand standards to ensure that we have safety, we have protocol, and we do what is right for our students, our families, our franchisees, and our staff.
Thank you, Ann. And as far as your team members in your headquarters, have you had any people leave because it was going to be remote, completely remote?
No, we haven't had any folks who have decided to leave because it is remote. And we really try to work with every employee to make sure that there is the comfort level and that there's structure. So Zoom, there is Zoom fatigue. I'm sure we're all used to it and a bit sometimes overwhelmed by it. So we've created different structures and reliefs in terms of having happy huddles, having different virtual lunches, huddles weekly to go over what's going on at different department and different levels. So we really are working with our staff and to ensure that there is that balance, that work-life balance. Also in terms of commute, now there isn't a commute, which is fantastic. However, you have to ensure that you turn off when you need to turn off. So last summer, we started free days, which were floating days beyond what you get for a sick day, holiday, etc., so that folks can take a day on us. And we've continued that. So at least once a quarter, we offer for our corporate employees a day on us where they can unwind and take off.
That's great. That's great. So, Bud, you have different, you're sending your employees, you've got your headquarter employees, but then you've got employees you're sending into companies. I'm sure this made this very complex for you as well. At your headquarters, is your employees back in your headquarters? Are you all still remote? How is that working for you? And then what about your franchisees? What challenges have they had having to send their employees into companies and business locations?
This is a great topic of conversation. We were awarded status as first responders because we were supporting first responders.
Mm-hmm.
So our office was never really fully shut down. We had some people in here. Now it was certainly limited. We have a staff here of about 30 people in the office, but obviously we have also staff that work remotely out of their own homes. So the regional directors that provide support to the franchises, they are working remotely already. But in our onboarded staff here, we got to a point where there were 4 or 5 people in the office and everybody else was working remote, and that was for about 2 months. After that, we came back, and the vast majority of our people wanted to come back and get back into the office and be part of the synergy. I know that you know there and kudos to you, honey, to be able to create that atmosphere and create that team approach. We felt that when we were all remote, but we made the decision that it was hard for us to say that we needed to all be working remote when our franchises were going to work every day and working in people's homes. It was. We also held 2 regional meetings last year, one in Vegas and another one and found hotels that would allow us to meet. We met in tables 6 feet apart. We created an opportunity for our franchise owners to get together, and that had a tremendously positive effect. Now, we did have some owners that didn't want to attend, and that was totally fine. But for those that did, it was an opportunity. We found that our franchises are a very social group, and when we gave them an opportunity to get together again, they did that. Now, we followed the guidelines in Vegas and in Nashville to have those meetings and to conduct them according to the rules that were there, and those went well. As far as our franchises, we had the majority of our franchises. We didn't have any franchises that really closed, and part of that is because COVID was just another service. There were still people that were having water damages or fire damages or that type of thing in their home or business, and they needed it taken care of. And we developed protocol and started communicating with the homeowner or the business owner to try to find out what their expectation was. We do have one story where the technician showed up and she said, "Okay, before you come in, I need to spray you both down with bleach." And we explained to her that was not an option that we were going to be willing to comply with. But overall, we found that the people that we were going to help were glad that we were there and appreciated the fact. And we did things like made sure that we asked if there was anybody that was had pre-existing health concerns, and so we really tried to do everything we could to make the customer feel better. And our employees were used to PPE. We wear it regularly, so it wasn't a big transition for our employees as much as it would be for the vast majority of other franchisees or franchisors.
So much like you at our headquarters, we had a few people. We have about 100 team members at our National Support Center and maybe about 40, 50 in the field. So we had a third of our business employees were already out in the field across the country, but we stayed remote. Most people did not want to come back to the office, and we stayed remote until just a couple months ago. Maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people would come in. The office was open, but we didn't have much presence in the office. We had to work really hard at connectivity, and not technology connectivity, but just relationship technology, engagement, because our environment, the culture in our office was very collaborative and also very cross-functional, collaborative intentionally. And at first it was really difficult to make that happen online. But as we all got used to it and got better at it, we even began to host events like mocktail parties and cocktail parties and book readings and things like that. And people weren't mandated, but fun things to try during their time when they were to be at work to help relieve the stress level, because everybody was experiencing the stress level of the uncertainty, the continuous uncertainty. We actually were going to open our office in September to a hybrid for the people that live in Atlanta, where we're headquartered, to a hybrid 2 days a week for meetings where we were cross-functionally meeting, and then 3 days at home remote, and suspect that's probably going to turn into a permanent situation, because we actually too have found more efficiency, speed, and using technology in ways that I think we would have probably all gotten to over time, but the pandemic just accelerated it, and here we were, right? So we, though, have canceled or postponed our hybrid approach because of the Delta variant and the surges that we're starting to see from and have been seeing over the last 6-8 weeks related to the Delta variant. The Delta variant has also caused issues where we got our child care centers open in the summer and more families were enrolling, and then we started seeing children getting sick. We haven't had children pass away, but the fear that parents feel if they're going to bring their children into an environment where we haven't mandated vaccines, and that's a question I'm going to ask you in a minute, but at our support center, we have not mandated vaccines. We've encouraged, and we are not making them show they're vaccinated when they come to the office. We are using protocols like they have to take their temperature and online say they haven't done, they haven't experienced any illness, etc. But it is very, very difficult to continue to maintain really strong relationships online. And we want to move back to a hybrid model. We won't be a permanent, I say won't, the world is changing and who knows, but we don't see that in the future of our company. And particularly, like as Bud just said, our franchise owners and their staff had to go to a location every day and serve families and children. And if they were going to do it, we felt like we needed to do it. We haven't put our support team back in the schools yet, because just until recently, many of the states wouldn't let parents or any visitors come in the child care centers. So the whole issue of technology integration has been really powerful. Again, a silver lining is we had to stand up very quickly in many states where they had not yet opened the child care centers. We had to stand up an online support for families so that they could homeschool their children. And many of them did. We still have that online model, and we'll be exploring that in the future for families that don't need child care but do want early education. I do want to ask, because it's a question we have right now, in terms of mandating vaccines, Anne, have you all encouraged, mandated at your headquarters and also in your franchise locations?
In terms of mandates, now our main office is remote. We just a couple weeks ago, we did film a new commercial, so look out for that commercial very soon. And at that commercial, of course, there were temperatures, certain tests were taken for different employees, and a questionnaire. In terms of at the center level, all of our centers follow the local regulations. So last week, for example, I was on the phone with our franchisee in New York City. And New York City, if you're teaching a student, and a teacher, there are mandates for vaccines and vaccination. And so it's really at that unit level to make sure that the franchisee is following the procedure within that state. And that's how we go about it. And that's what we've been doing since day one in terms of ensuring that the franchisees get the information they need, that they're up to date in terms of what's going on at the local, the state, the federal level. In terms of mandates at our main office, our corporate location, we are remote. So right now, that's the state of it. And just to add a little bit more about the remote, we too were planning on going back after Labor Day, and we made the decision early, I believe in June, that we weren't going to go back based off of childcare. So really what you do, Joe, every day. And a lot of our employees have young children, and they wanted to really make sure that they had a plan for this next school year, which is why we chose July 2022. And we're really going to rely heavily on our surveys and our task force to determine the long term of our main office. Our operations team, so our franchise business consultants and some members of our main office are traveling to centers and doing center visits. And of course, they're complying with regulations and if there's state mask mandates and all of that. In terms of our locations, we actually have some locations that are owned and operated by the corporate. So those are 14 locations in the New York metro area. And of course, in that area, the guidelines are very strict. So we just make sure that it's appropriate and that everyone is complying with the regulations. And that's how we feel and what we do. We rely heavily on our Franchise Advisory Council and our different councils within Huntington to ensure that we really understand what's going on with the franchisees and what's going on with our students and our families. What do the families feel? Are the families comfortable? What are the issues they're having? So we're really making sure we have a pulse at our customer level, at the franchisee level, the staff level, and at the main office.
And Bud, what about you? How are you handling vaccines at your headquarters? And then what about what are you seeing as trends with your franchisees and their employees going into other companies? I suspect you've experienced it really is market level, the state that you're in and the market you're in and what the expectations generally are, because we've seen such different opinions about vaccinations and mandating. How about what are you seeing?
Yeah, Joe, I think what I would say is we have franchises in California and Florida and several other states in between. And as we all know, the ranges of what is protocol changes dramatically. Here at the corporate office, we do not have a vaccine mandate. We have chosen to provide information to help clarify some concerns that people might have about the vaccine, but we have not made it a mandate. We feel that our employees have the right to choose what they want to do. Individual offices, we have a lot of our offices that have chosen to have a mandate within their own office to have their employees get the vaccine. It does help when you're going into someone's home to say that we've had the vaccine and that will help. But we have not, as a franchisor, made a mandate to the franchisees about what they should do. Again, just because of the wide variety of protocol throughout the country and even within the same states. It can vary dramatically. The New York metro areas are substantially different than what it might be in White Plains or some other part of the state. So, but again, because our franchises were working through the pandemic on a day-to-day basis and in people's homes, I think for them, they've reached what I would call a saturation point. They've either decided how that they're going to get vaccinated or not. their employees are going to or not, and they're just moving forward, and now it's treating it like another day at the office. The cleaning procedures that we went through to get the office ready for employees to come back was a big component of what added to that safety factor for our in-office people here.
I'm sure at our headquarters and in our supports in our franchise schools, which all of our schools are franchised, many of us were using your service or one like yours because the need to really raise the bar on health and safety and in the environment for the children, and then in our support center was just absolutely critical to the confidence of both the team members at our support center and to the families, and particularly the staff who were coming back to work. We really have, much like both of you, made the decision that it was an employee based decision in terms of our support center. And with our franchise owners, of course, because of joint employer, we can't mandate other than highly encourage. And because of what I mentioned and you mentioned too, is you're in many different locations. Austin, Texas is different than Orlando, Florida, right? And so we have been, encouraging franchise owners with information that we have about our competitors. And it's interesting, just in the last 2 weeks, several of the national corporate chains in the childcare sector have mandated vaccines or testing. And just today, this is the continual evolution of your thinking and how you're going to handle proactive business strategy in relationship to what is happening in the marketplace, both with your consumer, your employees, and your competitors. Of course, the national child care chains can mandate, and a couple of them have made the decision to do that. But it's in a situation of, my goodness, we really don't want them being able to say all our employees are vaccinated and we can't, but then joint employer puts us in a situation where they're independently owned and operated. We can't mandate anyway. All we could do is encourage. And we've been talking about that. Should we be encouraging? Are there states where legal issues are happening right now where maybe some companies have mandated and they're being sued, and we certainly wouldn't want to be put in that situation, nor to have our franchisees put in that situation. So it makes navigating the situation very, very complex. I suspect most of your competitors, both of your competitors, are franchised and are not being mandated by corporations, and they're certainly being very flexible too in the markets where they are. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things that's really helped our individual franchises to get a handle on this is that many of our franchises offered free services to other first responders, to hospital workers, to firefighters, to paramedics. And by doing that volunteer work for those people, it put our owners in contact with people that were obviously dealing with it every day. And so I think because of their contact with hospital workers and those type of things, they were hearing, the vaccine is a good thing. And so they were encountering people on a daily basis that were pro-vaccine. And so it made it a little bit easier for them to decide that that was going to be good for them as well. But I don't know of anyone in our space of restoration that has mandated anything for employees. Or like you said, they're independently owned and operated, and they make choices. So.
Mm-hmm.
One of ours and they are franchised, they have mandated that all of their employees and franchisees are vaccinated. And so we're in the same place as you, Bud, and you, Joe, that joint employer makes it very tricky. And we can recommend, there are guidelines, there are brand standards. In terms of employees, we believe, similar to you, Bud, that it's up to the employee. And so it's an ever-changing circumstance, and especially with Delta and the new variants. We actually, at our main office, we had a management meeting towards the end of June. It was very productive. It was excellent to see folks who we haven't seen in a year plus. And we plan to have another one in August, and due to Delta, we made that virtual. We tried to make it fun virtually, but there is that stickiness of being in person. We were also going to have our ad fund meeting in person in August, and due to Delta, we canceled that. So it's this ever-changing moment, and I can be on the phone with a franchisee in New York, and then 15 minutes later, one in Florida, and I have two very different conversations, and I understand both, and I understand that we're all doing the best we can to help our students, our customers, families, and all of that. So I think the key is to really just follow what's happening at that local level and be able to also look above the trees at the macro level and understand that it is changing, and as long as we are following protocols and being as safe as possible, that's what we have to do.
So we have about 4 minutes before we open this panel up to questions. Are there other major challenges that you're facing or your franchise system is facing that we haven't touched on right now? Are you seeing any type of seismic shifts in your industry related to the pandemic or the aftermath of the shutdowns and coming back? And have you experienced, some of you have explained that, yeah, obviously both of you have explained that using technology and certainly the impact of the pandemic on your business, but it was a high demand service that became even higher demand. But are there any other challenges that you've experienced that or are having right now within your system that I haven't touched on?
I think from our standpoint, one of the things is determining what is an appropriate level of clean. There's a wide variety of claims from people on, we can go in and in 10 minutes we can fog your facility and it'll, and I think when we talk about, and when you talk about putting employees back in facilities, I think it is important to have clear guidelines of what you've done to prepare the building and what that's going to look like on an ongoing basis, so that the employee has the ability to see how you have defined clean in your facility. I think that's important for the customer too, so that they know here's our protocol. These are the steps that we're taking. Here's how often we're taking them. And the more clearly you define that, then I think you're going to find the easier people will go to that peace of mind place about either coming to work or sending their children into a care facility or having teachers show up for school. The more you can define what you've determined to be a level of clean. Now, if somebody says that's not enough, well, that's their choice. But the clearer that definition is and the frequency is described, the better off you're going to be able to win that argument.
That's great feedback. I made a note because I want to make sure our team, as we bring our team back, our talent and performance group is really doing a good job of communicating what that is, not specifically, not just we've taken steps to create an environment that's safe. What steps have you taken is exactly what you're saying. Tell them exactly what you're doing, right?
And how often.
And how often.
Do that. Our facilities team at our main office, should someone need to go into work, there's an approval process, and then also we ensure we know who's there, so we know where to even clean more than usual. So we put Post-it notes at whose office was there. It's not very that's
not your high tech. That's not your high tech choice.
There you go. Some high low. In terms of one of the challenges we face, we are a service industry provider. So we're always looking for talent, especially tutors and teachers. And one of the benefits for Huntington is that we can have teachers be remote and also in center. But one of the challenges is really recruiting top-notch tutors, full-time folks at the franchisee level and the franchisor level. In addition to the Zoom fatigue, we have a great structure at the department levels and then also at the overall corporate level to keep folks engaged. This is the long haul, and we're doing this for at the least till July 2022. So how do we continue that engagement and really ensure that our employees know that when it's time to turn off, turn off. Don't log back in if you get a text. Of course, if you're ops and there's a serious issue, that's another thing. But we really try and tell folks at all levels that we'll figure it out, take some time off, let's come back tomorrow. And we're even doing that with our customers, where we offer webinars for them on different topics. And throughout the height of the pandemic, we were having multiple webinars, sometimes a week, on different topics, from mental health to typical tutoring, ADHD, remote learning, helping multiple children. So we're really trying to create resources not only for our employees, but for our customers as well. We're learning. I've learned from you, Bud, and you, Joe, and I think we just have to keep getting these best practices and implementing them at our system level, corporate level, and then unit level.
But I'm going to go over just a minute, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Alan. How have you dealt with, we too have had a huge challenge in recruiting talent, both at the headquarters and at the school level, certainly the teachers in the classrooms. How about you in terms of recruiting people? Any secret sauces there?
Well, one thing is I did a keynote. We had our convention in May, actually in Florida, and we had 50% of our franchise, over 50% of our franchises come and attend. And I spoke on how to find, hire, and keep good people. And a mission statement is more important than it ever has been. And I think you need to spend time and stress the value that your employees are going to be able to provide to people. Millennials are the largest workforce in the country right now. And millennials want to be part of something that's making a difference. So if you can demonstrate that you're making a difference, if you can demonstrate that there's a career path for them, and if you can demonstrate that you want their insight and their ideas, you're gonna attract people. But the number one thing that our franchises are finding that makes a difference is offering a flex schedule. We have some franchises that are currently running 4 days. Their employees work 4 10-hour days, and then they have 3 days off in a row. And that has been a game changer for some of our franchisors or franchisees in finding employees. They want some flexibility in what they're doing and how they're doing it. And Ann, I think that's one of the things that you've got going right now with your remote ops, is people have some flexibility about, if they need to take half an hour to go take care of their own children or something, they have that freedom to do it because it's all in their bubble. So,
well, I think that work-life balance that you've just touched on, not only the millennials, but all of us recognize how important it is. I think the pandemic has absolutely reset what's most important in life, and how to get quality out of your work, and how to get quality, keeping your family first and getting quality in your work, and you can balance it better. And all three of us are in the service sector, where we are mission driven, and we do make a difference in people's lives, and that does give us a competitive advantage, but it's still difficult for sure. For sure. Thank you both so much. And Alan, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I think you're going to handle the questions, if there are questions on the panel.
Yep, great. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, panel. Fantastic discussion. Okay, so over to the audience to see if we have any questions. I think we'll give it a minute to see what comes up. Thank you again. Before we get into the questions, in case I get carried away, thank you again for taking the time out of your day to speak with us, speak with each other, but also speak with the broader franchise community about how you have approached some of these challenges, and also, to you and your franchisees, the service that you provide into the communities. I think it's super important, especially in a couple of very discrete areas. It's something you said at the front, Joe, about almost sort of training tomorrow's workforce. I thought it was like super important and really insightful. This has been a really crazy year. We've got I spent some time in K-12, so I understand some of the impact on kids who have been out of school for a year. There's going to be a lot of catching up to do, and we can only do that through having really engaged franchisors and franchisees who are really dedicated to their mission, be it providing education for children, be it making sure there's a clean workplace for people to be able to go. So thank you again before I get carried away. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions yet, so I'll take this moment to just sort of plug the reminder for the next webinar, which is September 29th, where we'll be joined by Great Clips and the American Hotel and Lodging Association, and to talk about retaining, reactivating, and rehiring talent, especially as in some of other franchise businesses on other segments, people have had to be laid off, and now they're coming back to the office, coming back to their workplace, not necessarily an office, come back to their workplace, and we've seen that that's been a bit of a challenge for folks to say, okay, I laid this person off, or I furloughed this person, now I'm trying to reactivate them, bring them back into the workplace, and then how do you do that? So AHALA, the American Hotel Lodging Association, has been doing a lot of work around this. And Great Clips, one of our franchisor members, is going to join us and have part of that. Sydney, am I missing? Because it could be me. Am I missing anything? And just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
You are not missing anything. No questions coming in right now.
We answered all the questions because it's such a powerful panel. So with that,
Thank you.
Thank you all again. Thank you, our audience, for tuning in. And also looking at this this is going to be recorded. It'll be on community.franchise.org. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day and talk to you soon.
Thank you as well. Take care.
IFA. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.